All right, well, we'll kind of go ahead and get started here. But before I introduce our guests, obviously this is SRM Tech Talks. This is kind of the intersection between traditional finance and emerging fintech technologies. We obviously have a long history of talking about digital assets, cryptocurrency, blockchain, but have expanded to AI, digital ID, and a whole bunch of other things. I'm really excited to hear you guys talk today. It's great to hear about a credit union that's doing something in this space. Credit unions are pretty progressive that way. Part of that's because of the regulator, but a lot of that is, some of you guys are state regulated as well, and some of you guys are just really innovative. So excited to hear your stories. Also excited to kind of wrap up this year. It's been a fun year for digital assets. And think about Sam Bankman-Fried and FTX. We had PayPal launch a stable coin, BlackRock registered to do an ETF. I don't know if anyone follows the regulated liability network, but a bunch of banks had a successful trial this year with the New York Fed and their innovation center. We saw a couple launches of buy, sell, hold solutions. Of course, Bitcoin is on a bit of a rally. It's up 150%, kind of year over year. And not to end it on this one, but like Binance was chased after by Department of Justice, and I guess they've come to an agreement from a fine and potential jail time. So it's kind of standard crypto year, right, or digital asset year. But we won't be talking purely about that. Obviously, we're going to talk kind of a broad range. But to introduce our guests, we have Chase Larson. He is the Executive VP at St. Cloud Financial. Super excited to have him. That's you guys are based in Minnesota, I believe. And then you've also played the role of Chief Lending Officer, I think digital asset innovator. You've done some stuffs with blockchain in the past. Again, mentioned you were recently promoted. You've also, I think,
thank you,
had a second child that was just born. you've got an awful lot going on. And then Jonathan, I'll let you introduce yourself. We'll talk a little bit about both of your backgrounds here in a second. But you're the Chief Information Officer and Chief Innovation Officer for DaLand. As I understand, you guys are kind of a next generation CUSO focused on connecting operations of credit unions to a system of channels, digital extensions, and automation to assure delivery on future of commerce. And I know you guys are a strategic partner of St. Cloud. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you guys. We said we would have a conversation today, and we will. I'll ask a number of questions, and we can have the group join in as they want. But typically, we talk for about 45 minutes on a subject, and then we'll break in and have people ask questions. But maybe, Chase, if you want to kick it off a little bit about who you are, who St. Cloud is, what you guys have brought to market, how did you get where you are from a story standpoint, and then maybe you can turn it over to John, give a little bit about his background, and we can ask some questions about the solution and what it is that you guys have brought to market.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Larry. Happy to be on the call today. Appreciate the invite. As Larry mentioned, EVP, Chief Lending Officer for St. Cloud Financial, located here in central Minnesota. We have approximately just shy of 25,000 members, 346 million in assets, I think, as of this morning. We have an executive team that is very forward thinking. I appreciate that about our executive team as well as our board. As a credit union or an organization, our kind of strategy around digital assets and blockchain began 3.5-4 years ago. And actually, I think, John, your executive team came in and presented to our board maybe in early 2021. Is that right? I think I'm right there on that timeline. Okay. But really, I would say last 18 months, really, it was February of 22 that we really laid out our strategic roadmap moving forward, and we've started to execute on that. First is obviously listening to our members, and so we continue to engage with our members and understand what are our members' needs. What are their pain points? I got a lot of phone calls in November of last year when the FTX debacle was going on. My phone rang day and night, quite frankly. And then number two is educating our members. Third is safe storage of digital assets, which we'll get into on this call today that I'm excited about. And then there's 3 to 4 phases as we look ahead, and really we'll continue to stay agile with the market and with our member needs. For me, my love, if you will, with digital assets and blockchain began in August of 2016. I went through some different phases personally along the way, the booms and the busts, and thought I knew more than I did. I think a lot of people go through that with new tech. I started a consulting company in 2019. And for a while, I think I had 60, 65 clients focused on blockchain, digital assets. I was not a financial advisor. I wasn't taking any money from individuals in terms of managing their funds. It was really educational and really kind of mirrors up to the credit union strategy. So that's kind of fun. As Larry mentioned, 2 kids. I have a newborn at home, so I'm not sleeping a ton. And I have a beautiful wife, Michelle. She's I'd say her career is much more important. She works with kids that have been abused and molested. And we're both native to the area. Happy to be on the call today.
Chase, before appreciate all that background, and before give John a chance to explain a little bit his background, you mentioned engaging with members and some of the phone calls that you had received. Was that, I'm assuming, obviously some of those inbound calls, but you probably also reached out to them. Did you also look at, some of the outflows going to the crypto exchanges, and what were you seeing there? Because we've done that historically for a number of our clients. And what we found is that it typically works out to about, it was kind of at the height of the crypto boom, it's working out to about $1.8 million per month for $1 billion in assets. So, it could be a sizable amount going out to the exchanges. If you throw in things like self-directed investing, that number even gets bigger. But boy, a lot of deposits have flowed out. And I think that's what caught a lot of credit union executives' eyes, is like, whoa, holy smokes, we're losing deposits to these, third parties, and we're not getting anything for it, right? We're potentially losing a relationship with a member. We're not getting any sort of trading revenue on that. We're not able to use those deposits to fund future loans. So we need to do something. Was that a little bit about kind of your aha around that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And our data around that has gotten better. I would say we weren't great on the data side at first, and I think we thought the number was much smaller than what it was. So we thought it was 1 million. We thought we were data mining. We weren't, but we looked at it in May of last year, and it showed I think it was 1.6 million. We've since learned we weren't looking right. We weren't querying all the right pieces. We weren't catching wires. To your point, we weren't catching self-directed brokerage accounts. That number is a lot higher. And the weird thing, or the fascinating thing that I think caught our CFO by surprise, following FTX, that number actually increased as we rolled into the first part of 2022. And so the narrative, or the chatter, if you will, was negative following FTX, and it slowed down. But as we headed into the first part of 2022, the outflows actually increased, which was a fascinating thing for us. And I've heard others in the industry talk about it, and the impact, actually, I think if we look back, that impact is a terrible thing that happened to people. Terrible. The sad part is that's one industry. Think about all the other apps that people just sign, yep, and they never read the user agreement, but we won't get into that. But yes, it was data as well as hearing from people, to your point. Yep.
It's a shame that we don't have more credit unions that have a solution that could have prevented them from going to an FTX and having that experience, or even just to have conversations with members around digital assets, which, if we know kind of across the US, about 20% of people, investing age are invested in digital assets. So that's 20% that could be defrauded by someone as well. And in fact, I was at a conference last week in Key West, and I got a phone call out of the blue from my mother-in-law's investment advisor who had a client who he didn't know what was going on, and it was an older lady, and he kind of explained it, and I'm like, oh no, I think I know what this is. I talked to her, and it was a scam called the pig butchering scam, which is a terrible scam, but this lady lost $500,000, and she had a relationship with a credit union or a community bank that could have been warning her, because it was a digital asset scam. It also is a scam that works with traditional equities, but had they been having those conversations and educating her, she might not have been picked up by this scammer. And so, it's an opportunity for us to just better serve our members, deepen that relationship. John, I might give you a chance to talk a little bit about your involvement and how you guys are connected to St. Cloud and your path to where you are.
Yeah, thanks, Larry. Glad to be here today. So I've been working in or alongside credit unions now for 21 years, 22 years almost. I came into credit unions in the late 90s and early 2000s, around the time frame that a lot of them were starting to implement what we now call, modern relational cores, core processing systems. And so my passion in the space has always been working with credit unions to help them understand how to leverage those investments into those core processing technologies and actually get more out of them as they upgrade those core banking processing technologies. I did that inside a credit union for close to a decade, and now I've been outside alongside credit unions in the fintech capacity now, owning DaLand and now operating DaLand as a CUSO for about 13 years. In 2018, DaLand reformatted as a CUSO, and we structured what came to be known as the first next generation CUSO in the industry. We formed ourselves with a single shareholder that wanted to acquire a bunch of our intellectual properties and make sure that credit unions could apply those intellectual properties and strategies to their modern cores and be prepared for truly significant strategic challenges that were coming. Not necessarily preoccupied with things like online banking, mobile banking, vendor changes, and calling that strategic, but really building for the future and anticipating how money data was going to change. So we chose to partner with the credit union and reformat as a CUSO in 2018. We're 5 years into that now. We're doing very well. We've got great clients in all sectors of our business. So DaLand CUSO serves credit unions in terms of strategy definition and formation, strategy execution. So, safeguarding the change management and actualization of a multi-year strategy that a CU might build. And then we also build technologies that help to maximize the return on investment that these shops make into these very expensive core processing systems. The way we came to work with St. Cloud was they implemented a new core processing system. And as you can hear from talking to Chase, they've got a great vision as a leadership team on what they want to do with their banking data and how they want to serve their community going forward. And they approached us in 2021 to get some education around the digital asset strategy and how to potentially tie that into bank data processing and bank operations. And then throughout 2022, they worked very closely with us to build a proof of concept and a shelved product of how we could bridge what we call TradFi and DeFi. So bridge the centralized FI and TradFi space to DeFi space. By really plugging them into these new money networks, streaming money data networks, global money processing networks, and make sure that they could keep money processing and money storage of any type of money data and technology at the core of their operation. So we're super excited about what they're doing. I'm really enthusiastic and happy for Chase and the team that they're looking at launching here very soon. I want to give these guys kudos because, as technologists, we can do amazing things, but it takes courageous and clever partners. And these guys, you know, at some point in the future, this institution, St. Cloud, will deserve an immense amount of recognition from the industry for blazing the way with regulators, lawyers, legislators, state level, federal level. These guys have done astounding work that is going to make, you know, securing and supporting digital assets as part of community wealth natural and safe and efficient and seamless for their community, and hopefully show the rest of the industry a turnkey way to get into this space and not get cut out of the money processing business as local FIs. So thanks for having us here today, Larry.
That's a awesome background, John. Chase, that's going to tee up kind of my first question for you is, you know, obviously you see digital assets and blockchain technology as significant. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that in the context of credit unions, and then, you know, what have you done from a strategy standpoint and an implementation standpoint to really become a leader in this digital asset blockchain space?
Yeah, thank you, Larry. And John, that you're too nice, but thank you for the kind words. It's been great partnering with you. Yeah, I think digital assets or cryptocurrency, whether it's in the media or in the credit union space or FI space, more specifically, I think a lot of people get hung up on the word cryptocurrency. I think all of us on the call, whether it was ourselves or somebody around us, we've heard various misrepresentations or you know, mockings of it. And I think really what it comes down to, or at least what it came down to for me at a point in time, is I just didn't understand it. I didn't have time to dig in and really understand what it meant for our members and for our industry. It's a lot more, way more than cryptocurrency. I think today, and I'm probably going to get the number wrong, right, but there's 23,000 different cryptocurrencies you could invest in. There's a lot more FTXs probably hiding out in the weeds somewhere. We just haven't heard about it, and people hopefully are getting smarter. I think that's what events like that does. You know, as it relates to the credit union is serving our members, right? All of us in the financial services space, and it's morphed over time, as you mentioned, Jonathan, online banking. I was just getting into banking when debit cards were starting to take off. I remember my grandpa talking about the ATM. My grandpa managed a bank when I was a kid, and the ATM the tellers were up in arms back when I was just a small kid, that the ATMs in northern Minnesota were going to take away their jobs. They haven't. The debit card has also not taken away our jobs. However, I do think as we look at blockchain and frictionless movement of money, and as you think about what it means for your local economy to go on the blockchain, and the importance of retaining wealth locally, stewarding that wealth locally for your members, and being able to serve your members, whether you like blockchain, don't like blockchain, own crypto, don't own crypto, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it's about serving our members. And to your point before, Larry, it's about understanding the movement of liquidity and what this technology has the potential, and I personally think will do, from a positive, but also a negative if we don't embrace it and don't get our arms around it as an industry. For St. Cloud specifically, we started working, so I think our first call with Kyle Hauptman at the NCUA was last October. We've had numerous calls over the last year, to Jonathan's point, with board members from the NCUA Western Region, State Commerce Department, really trying to help educate more than anything. And I don't say that in a negative way or to say that they're not smart individuals, but no different than somebody did for me once years ago, is they're looking at tons of different items. And I think that's our role, if we understand it, is to educate our partners, both regulators and non-regulators. For us, so 2.5 years ago, our CEO and myself and our board chair really started to look at what is our offering going to look like for our members. And most of us have heard of NYDIG, and there's other options out there where we could move forward through a vendor relationship or a partner relationship and start with buy and sell. And we do think buy and sell is important. If our members are buying and selling, why not help? But I think more importantly, and we got there before the FTX debacle, is safe storage. When I had my consulting company, the number one question I got was, Chase, how do I move my assets off of Coinbase into a cold storage wallet and I'll pay you $250 an hour? And it was people of all ages, 22-year-olds to 55-year-olds. And so listening to our members, number one, number two, education, number three, self-storage. And I had somebody in the industry say, well, and actually a regulator as well say, well, are you thinking about your income? What's your fee structure going to be if you're not offering transactions? For us, it's about starting with being that safe keeper of our members, fruits of their labor, quite frankly, and it's just taking a different form today.
Chase, I've got a couple of follow-up questions on that. One, you mentioned about kind of the education around cryptocurrency and digital assets, and as we all have collectively learned, it's a lot broader than just crypto, right? And I kind of started out the same, where like my understanding of crypto was, Bitcoin and Ethereum, and then a bunch of other altcoins. But then I got into like, okay, what's really we're talking about are digital assets, and digital assets are a lot broader. And even from a forget the investment standpoint, whether or not you believe these things are good investments or not, there are transactional uses for these things. And you start hearing about things like stable coins and how do they work today? How could they work tomorrow? We hear about things like tokenized deposits and what are those things, or central bank digital currencies. And so, to be ready for the future, which is the digitization of money, I think you need to start, you need to start somewhere. And it's just beyond the digitization of money, because everyone will say, well, money's already digital today. And it is. It's debits and credits on a core platform, right? But these are like siloed cores. And if you listen to what the Bank for International Settlements is talking about, if you're looking at some of the trials like the Regulated Liability Network with the Fed, New York Fed Innovation Center, they're looking at, can we put these things on chain so that we have a shared ledger and we don't have to do this thing where we're transferring liabilities and on the back end settling with kind of some assets, and it takes a lot of time and there's settlement risks, and it just is a very convoluted way of moving value when we've got much better solutions today. And not to say that blockchain solves all, but I'm super excited that you guys have started to think more than just crypto. And your point about storage, I think that's an important one. And I would be really interested in your opinions on this, because I've heard it both ways, and I can make arguments probably both ways about whether self-custody or someone custodying it on your behalf is a good thing. What's your thoughts on that? Because I've self-custodied, and gosh, if I forget how to use those keys, I get a little bit older and whatever. Like, man, I could really screw that up. But then there's also people who are offering kind of custody in a safer format, or maybe they've got the keys split between multiple institutions and they've got a way of backing them up. So maybe you can talk a little bit about how you guys came to the conclusion that, self-custody in the version that you've got was kind of the right way for your members, and how that might differ from other things that might be on the market.
Yeah, I think that's in my opinion, this doesn't trump self-custody, right? I think to your point, self-custody, I'm custodying my own assets. I don't know that there's a more true form. However, in talking with members and even people, we formed, it was myself and 5 other individuals outside of our credit union, different industries, formed the Minnesota Crypto Council a couple of years ago. We're split on the board, and some of the guys and gals on the board have owned crypto or been in this space longer than I have, and even in their in their 30s, mid 30s, it's split. Some of them say, I don't want to manage it. I'm not going to go buy a Ledger Nano S. And so I think number one, we're specifically speaking to crypto and owning digital assets from a ownership standpoint. I'm not here to tell you that I think it's better than storing, just like I have cash in my safe at home, right? But I do store some in the credit union I work at, as well as another institution. And so I think it's really about serving individuals who either are going to choose to self-custody some, but not all of their assets, right? Don't put all of your assets in one basket. And I think the other point is I look at solutions on the market outside of self-custody that are not an exchange. Is I haven't found any that doesn't mean they don't exist, but I haven't found any where for us, our offering, I would say, think of it like a digital safety deposit box. It's not convoluted assets. We're not recognizing those assets on our balance sheet, at least not today, and going to lever them. We're creating a safe place. Yesterday it was, or in the past, maybe it was providing a safety deposit box for a member to store a gold bar or stock certificate. And today and in the future, it's a digital representation of a safety deposit box that is more secure than Coinbase or FTX holding onto those assets for our members.
Yeah, and that's a great point, because I think that's one of the regulators' pet peeves is the fact that a lot of these kind of custodial agents are also exchanges, and where they get in trouble is, are they commingling funds, are they rehypothecating this stuff, or leveraging it up, and you don't know, right? There's no real good way to know that, because you've given them the keys to your crypto and they're holding it on your behalf. And it's not like it's sitting in a particular address where you can even go see that, right? It could be commingled with a bunch of other clients' assets. So it sounds like what you have is a pure custody solution. Again, your analogy of a digital safe deposit box is a good one. And I do like your suggestion of, like, people will keep some cash at home and people will keep the bulk of their cash in their trusted financial institution. And you need to know how to do both of those things safely. And so custodying crypto safely at home would mean having it on some sort of a device and having that in a safe place, and knowing what your backup keys are, and then having that held with your credit union is a little less effort, right? But just as secure.
Yeah. And I think maybe on the technical side, John, if there's anything you want to add, not that you have to, but John is one smart dude when it comes to the technical side of how this stuff works.
I agree with everything you guys have discussed here about the difference between self-custody, versus using a trusted institution or an intermediary. And I don't think that debate is going to go away in the digital asset space, because of course these distributed ledger technologies have been purpose-built to remove the need to trust that third party and to take away third-party risk or counterparty risk. So, you're always going to have the maxis and the hardcore contingents out there that don't want to deal with an institution in terms of their digital assets. I think that, more important than that, though, I think all the folks listening on this call who are related to institutions in one way or another have to ask the question whether they can stay disconnected from these new money networks, these streaming money networks, and still remain in the money storage and money lending and money transacting business. I don't see how it happens, right? Simultaneously, I think that we have to look at the fact that, and our solution is built this way to anticipate an evolution of this new market space. I mean, we are looking at arguably the first truly new asset class in half a century. So we're going to see a lot of evolution and shift and metamorphosis as we move along the way here. We're also going to see a lot of argument and battle and all kinds of other things go on. So the way that we've architected this solution, like Chase is saying, is to allow institutions to move as quick or slow as they want down the progression from, digital vaulting, as we call it, this digital safe deposit box, all the way to treating it as a currency inside the financial system core and general ledgers and ecosystem natural financial processing operations of the FI, to transacting it and using it as payment rails, so you don't have to continue fueling plastic cards providers in perpetuity, and then even go into the exchange route someday when our legislators and regulators aren't scared of the B word anymore, the Bitcoin word. So to us, from a technology perspective, it's all about understanding that this is just a new basic units of accounting, is how I like to explain it to folks who are afraid of the word Bitcoin or want to argue about whether it's inherently got value or something like that. I think what we're seeing is an evolution toward a new basic unit of accounting in many different sectors, one that's transparent, one that's distributed, one that's immutable, one that's not under the control of any single centralized authority and therefore maybe can't be debased or inflated or fraudulently tampered with. And those all seem to be very good things, important attributes for a basic unit of accounting. Now, I would comment on something Larry said a minute ago. So Larry, you said, we basically have digital money today. When I speak with boards and credit unions, I try to educate them that we don't, and this is very important. We have electronic dollars today, and that's very different. So we have essentially these dollars that are stored as ones and zeros. And in reality, those basic units of accounting themselves do very little other than get stored in databases as ones and zeros. And they get reconciled through batch files and some TCP/IP and other API type communications all over the world. But I think what we're seeing the need arising for when you think about Web3, the buzzword Web3 is really all about merging commerce and the internet, or merging money and the internet. There's obviously a use case arising for money that natively lives in and on the internet, or what you could call streaming money. And our current electronic dollar is not going to suffice as a basic unit of accounting in a streaming money world. So I think FIs listening have to really ask, can they continue to bet only and inherently on the future of the electronic dollar? Or do they have to start preparing for consumers and commerce and industry to move towards a new, more modern, more digital, streaming ready, streaming native unit of accounting? And when they think that way, the idea of Bitcoin, and all the debates around, is it going to replace the dollar and all that stuff, doesn't matter. What's obvious is that some industries, some nations, some businesses, some corporations are going to decide to hold it on their books and use it in their trade as a unit of accounting and exchange. And if as a financial institution, if you choose not to use your core processing system and your core financial operation to plug into that new system of accounting, which is global in scope already, then you're choosing not to be part of potentially a massive chunk of the money processing and money movement business in the future. And our CUSO certainly doesn't want to see that. We want to see local financial cooperatives remain viable places to store wealth, store capital, use capital, and not be cut out by the advent of a new basic unit of accounting or the introduction of something like CBDCs. And so we're building a technological solution and have built a solution that will let them evolve as the understanding of these new global units of accounting evolve.
Jonathan, I mean, is one of those things you're looking at building ultimately kind of new core solutions, because cores are not set up today for programmable money or streaming money, because they don't have any real connection to on-chain data. Is that something you guys are looking at as well?
Well, actually, a couple of them do now have connections to on-chain data, thanks to our what we call code engine innovations.
No kidding. Okay.
So, but you're raising an important point. Well, I mentioned my career going back to late 90s, early 2000s, when there was the epochal shift of folks getting off of the flat file systems into relational databases and stuff. We're going through another, epochal shift right now, which is there are people who are on cores that just aren't going to keep up with the world of streaming money.
Right.
So hopefully you've invested money into modernizing your core processing platform in the last 15 to 20 years. If you haven't, you're dealing with an entire new quantum leap called DLTs and blockchain, and the need to integrate to that, to tap into that market cap and those transaction networks. Now the good news for folks is if they're on really outdated core processing solutions, I'm sure Visa and MasterCard and their many partners will come along and package up things to help you plug into that stuff through the electronic dollar. There'll be retrofitting of this stuff, but there's a difference between, retrofitting and putting a square peg in a round hole and shaving off a lot of the meat, so to speak, and truly building the right plug-in into these networks to be part of the future of where money is going. And I want to emphasize that that's what I see the team at St. Cloud doing. That's why I talked about their intellect and their courage and their passion to do that. And so they'll be able to start with digital vaulting as a way of being essentially a trusted hardware wallet for their users' digital wealth. But they'll also then be positioned, because of other investments and strategies that they've executed, to monetize that, turn it into part of their financial operation, use it for local transactions, create revenues and margin off of transactions, all kinds of things that will come in time with regulatory, legal, and other clarity in the marketplace. So
if you can explain a little bit of what your digital vaulting is, and how it works, how people move money to it and away from it. And you mentioned counterparty earlier, and it's funny. I was listening to something the other day, and they were talking about self custody, and they said that even the best self custody, unless you are not telling anyone your keys or where your devices are, you've got a counterparty. That counterparty risk might be with your wife or it might be with your kids, but there's some counterparty risk. At some point you have to trust somebody with it, else those things die with you. And I was like, yeah, actually that's an interesting way to look at it. So it's picking who is your counterparty. Is it that person you're going to trust your financial institution? Is it your neighbor? Is it some exchange that you know nothing about? And I think that's where St. Cloud, you guys might have a real advantage.
Yeah. I would say it's the platform, or the way we've built it from a member-facing standpoint. My mom could use it, and that's saying something. She's still got a flip phone, but you would log on. A member would log on to their vault, their platform, or their landing page for our vault, and they have four options technically. It's Bitcoin, Ethereum, USDC. You hit receive. Generates a public address. They're going to put it in their Coinbase or whatever exchange they're using and hit send, and the assets show up in their vault. I think the biggest thing is, as I mentioned, we're not reflecting those assets on our balance sheet because they're not our assets today. And in stage one of vaulting, we're just simply trying to be a safe way for our members to store their assets. We have obviously they can walk in the branch, and we'll have some involvement, right, if they lock themselves out. But from an access to their private keys, to Jonathan's point, through Code Engine, we have limited purview, and we've removed a lot of the what I'm going to call counterparty risk from a single person having keys to the castle or access.
And so when it goes into that digital vault, is that segregated for that specific member, or is it like an omnibus account and you guys have an internal ledger where you kind of keep track of that?
No, it's specific to that single member. We're not commingling.
That's a good solution there, it sounds like.
Yeah, I think one of the other things that is unique about the approach that St. Cloud is using is, I'm going to pick on Chase a little bit because he used the word platform, but I'm going to brag on what they're actually doing, because they're not actually using a separate software platform to accomplish this. And that's really important in terms of security and integration of digital assets into the standard banking operation. So all that functionality that Chase just talked about is delivered from within their modern core. And doesn't require any secondary softwares or logins to outside platforms or anything like that to accomplish. There's some wizardry there because of what DaLand calls the core centric philosophy, that we've used for a decade now. Like I said earlier, in our partnership, our focus is always on helping these FIs really get a better ROI out of their core, because usually it's their most expensive employee, and frankly, it underperforms relative to what it's capable of doing. So in this case, that core system that's already storing all of their PII and member information and sensitive financial data is being leveraged to support the storage of these digital assets in a way that doesn't create any risk from a loss or theft with internal staff, and also doesn't turn the banking operation into a honeypot for would-be crypto thieves. Although I think there's this notion that Bitcoin is somehow more susceptible or a greater target of hacking, I think is a little bit silly. If you just contemplate dollar users and dollar market cap versus Bitcoin users and Bitcoin market cap. But anyway, we made sure that as they vault these assets, they're not inherently turning their FI into a honeypot target for people who want Bitcoin.
So to that point, how do you protect your members from a security standpoint, and how do you educate them so they don't make dumb mistakes like handing over their versions of the keys to someone that shouldn't have them? Like how are you protecting them from a technology or education standpoint?
Yeah, I think first is access and how they interact with their vault. I think second is Larry, what was your first question? Your second question was how did they not hand over their keys, but what was your first question?
Was really how do you protect them from a security and education standpoint? So are you educating them to not hand over their keys, or are you making it difficult from a security standpoint that they can't do that? So one's like more of a technical way of protecting them versus an educational way of protecting them.
Yeah, I think whether it's this offering or any offering, we've been out ahead a little bit, I would say, from an education standpoint, right? We've spent hours. We started educating our members and employees 6-7 months ago. We have what I'm going to call it's the crypto corner. We've actually changed it now, and it's Web3 and the digitization of money. And so we're always educating, and security is top of mind, whether it's our product or other offerings in the marketplace. And then I think from how they interact with their vault, we're limiting any potential risk or removing the potential risk of handing over their keys to some stranger.
And what, may I ask, what percent roughly of your members are engaging in digital assets, do you think?
Yeah, so fascinating. Let me think about this. Or in 23, so it had been in 2021 when we did our member survey, it was 26 or 24%. We do that survey in December. So then last year when we did it, it was within 3 weeks of the FTX debacle. And it was 19% of our respondents, right? And so we've got an average of, call it 21 to 22%. I would say based on through the Minnesota Crypto Council, we host quarterly community engagements. We obviously blast that out to our members, and I would say with the exception of one of the events, our members are 50 to 55% of the attendees. We have a pretty good response rate from our membership. And the other fascinating point is if you look at the demographics of our members, and that's always changing and morphing, but good majority, 65 to 70% of our members are over the age of 42. So the notion that it's just the young kid, Johnny, that's interested in these things is not true.
We found that as well. Go ahead, Jonathan.
Well, yeah, I was going to say I'll just layer on some additional insights there from the data perspective, since I kind of like to nerd out on that stuff. So when we deploy our solution to a credit union on a modern core, this is where we start, is helping them understand how many assets have already left, and then helping them use the marketing and targeting capabilities of that core to start recapturing those assets. Here's the thing: when you dig in, like statistics are somewhat evil, right? Because they lie as easily as they paint any picture of the truth. So when you say, oh, there's 20% of the members using crypto, which would hold true US wide, by the way, based upon Coinbase surveys this year, their updated data this year. That's not really the whole story. The whole story is you have to dig into whether or not they're your high net worth members. And the answer is yes. Whether they're your millennial members, which are the ones that are going to give your institution some runway and profitability for the next few decades. And the answer is yes. Whether they're your Z members, which are your ones that aren't high net worth yet, but are, you have to offer them something to retain them as banking customers. And they're not generally interested in banking, it turns out. So there's a challenge there. So there's all these other nuances to that data that I think make digital assets really significant to credit unions. Also, you mentioned the self-managed wealth funds and stuff like that. It took us as core experts quite a while to build these reports to where they were painting the whole picture. Because I thought there'd be a few locations that people were peeling off capital and sending it over to crypto, but there ended up being dozens and dozens of ABA numbers and debit card processors that are representing all kinds of little nooks and crannies in the world out there where money is going. And it's really crucial to figure out who those folks are in your FI and to target them and to start pulling that capital back in. I'm definitely not advocating for financializing that data at this point. There's not enough regulatory clarity around whether you can start holding this stuff on your balance sheet and collateralizing against it yet. But I do think by Q1 2024, you're going to start seeing that shape up. And if you don't have this data and you don't have a way to recapture this stuff in an appealing, cost-effective, efficient way, then you're not going to be positioned to put that capital on your balance sheet and use it for collateralization and lending end transactions. And that's what we want to see local FIs doing well into the future, regardless what shape or network money lives on or takes, right?
So in terms of measuring success would be probably recapture rate, stemming the flow of deposits, deeper engagement with the member, probably cross-selling other products and services, using it as an acquisition tool for maybe targeting other, new members to the credit union. What other measures of success might you have or be looking at outside of some of those?
No, I'll keep it really simple from a technology standpoint, and then I'll let Chase talk FI operations and profitability. But from a technology standpoint, you're either plugged into where money is going and where it's evolving and how it's moving and being stored, or you're not. So it's binary. It's like you're either connected to the future of money and the evolution of money, or you're all in on the electronic dollar. And if you're all in on the electronic dollar, I got to come meet you because you've got something great you're smoking for that hopium of how your members are going to keep protecting the value of the fruits of their labor. So we're past the point of believing that money isn't going to evolve. We're seeing it evolve in what the Fed and NACHA and SWIFT are doing. So we've got to bet on money becoming digital through CBDC or Bitcoin or something else. And I think getting off zero is the win. And what I mean by getting off zero is getting into something other than being ready for other forms of exchange and storage than the electronic dollar.
Yeah, and I think Jonathan, you said that well. I think for us, it's for our operation today, and there's obviously many metrics as Jonathan's mentioned or we've talked about as we look into the future. I think for us, we don't know where things change, and especially in the blockchain and digital asset space, it feels like there's a new buzzword every 12 to 18 months. But one thing that remains constant is our members are interested in this space across all age ranges. And so engagement of our members is a success metric for me. Profitability, and what do I mean by that, is being able to house and serve natively in our core and not give profits to a third party at the expense of our members' safety and risk. And then educating our members. It's fascinating to me, even in the little bit of time that we've been educating our members, the the first 4 months, it was like the same 4 or 5 people that would reach out after an educational piece would go out, or we'd have a Minnesota Crypto Council event, and just seeing the change in demographics that in the interest to me means we're making a difference. And at the end of the day, I can live with that.
That's awesome. A couple real quick. So, I mean, I know I think you've trademarked CU Digital Vault or something along those lines. Do you have a product that you're selling either through the CUSO? If there's other credit unions that are interested in getting into this, what kind of advice would you give them? Is it something that they can reach out to you guys about? How does someone else get started in this space?
Jonathan, I'll kick that one to you.
Yeah, so CU Digital Vault is the branding and the description of the FI operation, and that's always how our CUSO operates. So you actually see our stuff all over the place out there. You just don't see it branded as the whatever brought to you by DaLand, right? So what we refer to this technology as is coin to core. So architecturally, what we've built is a way to plug into any DLT and safely bring those assets into the core, use them on the core, communicate back out to that DLT. So we call that coin to core, which is also, trademarked and protected and all that good stuff. But yeah, this is why we exist as a CUSO, is to partner with FIs on strategies and execution toward these strategies. And if somebody wants to know, if somebody's looking to start that journey and just understand how many members they've got that have pulled money out, and what profile those members are and how to target them, we can walk them down that road as far as they want to go. By using DaLand CUSO, it does not mean that you're inherently hooking your credit union up to Bitcoin. I think you'll probably get there when you see all the facts, and we'll get you there safely and soundly. But we do education and consulting and operational build and assistance all the way through, including the technological component to bridge TradFi to DeFi when they're ready, right? And also, as I said earlier, assuming that they're on a modern, relevant core, because some folks are just going to have to, pay the piper when it comes to the fact that they haven't invested into keeping money data processing modern in the last 15 years. So
yeah, that's unfortunate, but I'm sure there's a few out there. Let me see if there are questions that anyone else might have, because there might be a few. I want to give people a chance to ask some questions.
Larry, you stole my question. Is this commercialized for other credit unions, and how do people contact you? I'm helping a company that's just built a product for digital will and trust for members that self-custody. Have you come across any solutions for that? Or
I have not. Jonathan?
Well, I'm not sure what the question is there exactly, Paul. Like, do they have like tokenized assets that they're looking to put into what would be traditionally referred to as an escrow account or something like that?
Yeah, I'll be happy to put you in touch with the founder CEO. They just brought on
have them reach out.
As one of their advisors.
As Chase pointed out, the goal with what they're launching is that they can tie into any of these DLTs. He mentioned the ones that they've targeted for their initial launch. But you're raising a really significant point that wealth is going to be represented by any number of tokenized assets on many different diverse DLT networks. And if FIs don't have operational capacity to store those tokens safely,
oh yeah, good point.
Good luck being valuable to your consumers in the future.
That's a really good point. Other questions?
Just a heads up, I've got to drop in about 3 minutes. I sincerely apologize, but I have another conflict. So
no, and we're coming up on the hour anyway. Jonathan, Chase, any questions that you think they should have asked that they haven't asked?
No, the one thing I would add though is, and Paul, I didn't understand your question, but Jonathan, to your point about tokenization, if you haven't looked into it, if you think tokenization isn't happening, I mean, there's a DMV out in California tokenizing car titles. They're tokenizing investments and real estate. It's coming much more than crypto, much more.
Yeah.
Well,
And
Chase and John, I reached out to both of you on LinkedIn. So Larry, maybe you send an email introduction. I'll do a 2-minute intro for the founder of that company.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'll send you their emails. Well, gentlemen, I really appreciate your time today. This has been super insightful. Kudos to you guys for having the courage to do something in this space. We're going to be really interested to watch your trajectory and see where this goes. But for anyone that wants to reach out to you, again, I'll circulate your contact information afterwards. And of course, we recorded this, so we'll send the video out after we've had a chance to look at it, make sure there aren't any edits. But want to appreciate everyone that spent the time today, especially given it's kind of coming up on holiday season and people are getting ready to travel. Truly appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you all.
Take care.
Thank you, guys.
Yep.
Have
Happy
a good day.
holidays.